Hank is not autistic. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Autism is my power, and today I have a special guest, Hank Hill. I'm about to explain why Hank Hill is not autistic, but instead, he has other problems outside of that. Who is Hank, you may ask? Well, I don't know who doesn't know, but Hank is from a show known as King of the Hill. Hank is with his family, Bobby, who is his son, and Peggy, who is his wife. And most of the show is about how Hank is coping with how his family is different. Mostly Bobby, to be fair. And it showed that the world is not all black and white, basically. The show has other characters, but I'm not going to go over them today, maybe eventually. But for now, we're just going to go over Hank Hill. First, let's discuss Hank Hill's childhood. Well, as we know, Hank is raised by his mother and his father, which his father's name is Cotton Hill. And as we may know, Hank came from a very abusive childhood, mostly from Cotton's side. Yes, Hank's mom didn't help with this either, didn't defend Hank with anything, but you gotta understand that Hank's mom was also going through trauma as well. But no, Hank had a lot of trauma thanks to his father, with his father teaching him how to be a man, quote unquote. And this contributes to how Hank sees life to this day. As we also know, Hank eventually met Buck Strickland when he was very young, right before he married Peggy. And Hank used to work, I believe, at a jeans shop, but I cannot recall at the moment. But yeah, but Buck, you can say, was his father figure, so to speak. And he helped Hank to realize his passion and his drive, which was selling propane and propane accessories. Eventually, as we know, Hank married Peggy Hill. And as we know, Hank has a narrow urethra, which means that he cannot produce children as effectively as most men. But so he got Ladybird, which is his dog. And eventually they did conceive Bobby. And then let's fast forward to the present. This is how Hank Hill is the man he is today. As we know, Hank has his 4 friends, Dale, Boomhauer, and Bill. And now I'm about to get into why I believe Hank doesn't have autism. And the reason why is because he doesn't, though he has similar signs, like overstimulation and consistency, that doesn't have to be just autism. In fact, I'm about to give you guys not 1, not 2, not 3, not even 4, but 5 mental disorders that Hank Hill could possibly have. In fact, these 5 are general anxiety disorder, social anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, adjustment personality disorder, which is a new one I heard about, and avoidant personality disorder. But you may be asking, but Bryson, that could just all be part of autism. That could overlay with each other, right? And yes, that's true. But here are some reasons why Hank doesn't really have autism, in my opinion. Well, for one, Hank has a range of emotions. Like, with a person with autism, they have the same monotone, and they have basically very few emotions they can gather at times. But Hank, we've seen Hank be angry, we've seen him cry, we've seen him be sad, we've seen him be very happy and upbeat, we've seen him change his tone all the time. So that's one reason why I don't think Hank has autism in that aspect. 2, if you notice, Hank's speech patterns aren't really that repetitive. Don't get me wrong, this is a cartoon and he has very repetitive phrases sometimes, but you got to keep in mind it's a adult animated cartoon, so he has to have catchphrases. But if you look at Hank's speech, he doesn't really say the same things all the time. Yeah, he says, yep, and stuff like that to his buddies and stuff. But to everybody else, he doesn't interact the same with everybody else. He speaks to everybody like in a different way. Like he speaks to John Redcorn differently. He speaks to Con differently. He speaks to Nancy differently. Peggy, Bobby. He has different speech patterns for everybody. So that's also another factor why I don't think he has autism. And 3, Hank has many interests. Don't forget about the memes for a second, with basically Hank always loving propane and propane accessories. That is a stereotype that really only been articulated in later seasons. But no, Hank has many talents. He's good with his yard. He can also do construction. He helps his friends with many projects. And so many, he goes to church. He can do speeches. I mean, Hank is a really talented dude. Usually with a person with autistic, the average autistic person, they usually only have one or two talents they are amazing at, and everything else are just okay at. Not with Hank. Hank is actually a very well-rounded individual. So now I'm about to get into Hank's mental disorders. First, let's start with his generalized anxiety. Yes, Hank definitely has generalized anxiety. The reason why is because if you notice, Hank really doesn't like talking to new people that's outside of his social circle. This is going to also go with his social anxiety as well, which I'll go into that as well. Hank doesn't really like to shop that much and be out in public. As we know, he hates the Megalomark. So, yeah, that's also a factor. If you notice, yes, Hank does basic work as a manager for Buck Strickland. So that is a little bit controversial, but just because you have anxiety doesn't mean you can't talk to people. I mean, look at me, I have anxiety, and I can still talk to people just fine. And plus, we know with Hank's anxiety, he also shows it with his family a lot, which I'll go into with the next clip. In my opinion, Hank also has avoidant personality disorder. Well, just hear me out for a second. The reason why is because he avoids Bobby and Peggy a lot of the times. If you notice, Hank doesn't really spend time with Bobby and Peggy that much in most of these episodes. And even Luann, actually, I forgot to mention Luann in the beginning of my video, so here she is. And basically, the reason being is because Hank is mostly to himself. Like, Hank only cares about his propane, his yard, and his friends, basically. And it's not that Hank doesn't care about Bobby or Peggy or Luann. It's just that he doesn't know how to express how he loves them, so he'd rather pretty much avoid them most of the time. We've seen this mostly in season 1, but he has gotten better along the way with this personality disorder. But we know, especially with Bobby, that Hank doesn't really spend time with Bobby whatsoever, unless Bobby's interested in the same things Hank is, like football, being a man, quote unquote, or propane, obviously. And obviously the last thing is, if you notice, Hank doesn't really spend time with Peggy that much. So, I mean, in most episodes, we just see them talking from time to time, and it's fun and dynamic, but if you really dissect it, they really don't go on dates that often or hang out with each other in most episodes. I also think that Hank has obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. My reason being is because, obviously, Hank is obsessed with propane. He's obsessed also with his truck from time to time. He's obsessed with Ladybird, which is his dog. And that's pretty much most of the things he's obsessed about. And anytime any of those things go wrong, he gets very depressive. He gets very angry from time to time. And he even can't function sometimes if any of those things go wrong. They have to be moving at a smooth capacity for Hank to function properly throughout the day. That's why I think he also has obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. And the last personality disorder I believe he has, which is new to me, which is adjustment personality disorder. Now, adjustment personality disorder is basically when you have, obviously, a hard time adjusting to new changes. Hank has this in spades. This can be mixed up with autism as well. But basically, let's name some examples. Like I said before, when something goes wrong with propane, he freaks out. When somebody's not using propane for his grill or something, when they're using charcoal, he freaks out and can't adjust to that. Everything Bobby does, he cannot adjust to what Bobby is doing, and he can't really accept Bobby for who he is sometimes because that's not what Hank grew up with. Also, with any changes with his life, like with Luann or something, getting a new boyfriend, or dating when he's dated Boomhauer, he can't handle change that well. And I understand that can be mixed up with autism as well, and quite possibly he could have autism. But in my opinion, I still don't think this is the case. So why do I think Hank has all of these disorders, and how did it come to fruition? Well, obviously, what I said in the beginning of the video, Hank had a very bad childhood. Hank's dad, Cotton Hill, basically molded him to what he believed he had to be. So, With that being said, it caused Hank to have a lot of trauma. And this trauma is what caused him, in my opinion, to have all of these disorders. And honestly, even though Hank has these disorders, he does a really good job in functioning in society. Like, I commend Hank Hill for this. Hank is a very, very good character. Even with all this trauma and stuff like that, Hank still manages to find a way to function in life, have a relatively high paying job, I guess. Not to be aggressive as much, and to even be a decent father figure for Bobby, and to be an outstanding husband for Peggy. Hank is a really great character, and he's a very interesting character to talk about. But yeah, guys, that's it. That's the reason why I don't think Hank Hill has autism. But I do believe he has all these other trauma and stuff like that. Yes, don't get me wrong. Hank could very well have autism. For all we know, the creator can just say, oh yeah, Hank is autistic, and then this video just went down the toilet. But no, my personal opinion, I'm going to leave you guys with this. Just because somebody has a lot of anxiety and all these problems and stuff like that does not mean they have autism. Autism is just a different way of thinking and a different neurological way of thinking. So, and I don't believe Hank has this really. So guys, thank you for watching the video. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Yup.